Join me in painting a self-portrait to be used as a profile picture. I started painting this self-portrait after creating the process video of my self-portrait that I did back in 2023. The one from 2023 wasn't one I was happy with, as I felt it didn't really represent me and nor did it represent the style I work in. And if I wasn't happy with it, then the best way to remedy that was to simply repaint it, which is exactly what I did. The finished portrait is the fourth attempt at this self-portrait, though I'm also showing the process for the third version, as the fourth image is actually painted over it, and it would look really weird if the video started with me tracing a portrait that just appeared out of nowhere. And yeah, there are two versions prior to these that may have been okay and looked like me, but they weren't as simplified as I wanted. And while I am decent at simplifying animals and things I draw from imagination, I often struggle with simplifying portraits. So this was also a bit of a challenge for me to get right, which is why I ended up painting so many versions of the same self-portrait. You may be asking yourself, why do artists draw and paint self-portraits? Well, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I do think it comes down to, first and foremost, wanting to paint portraits, but also time, access, and familiarity. Let me explain. Art is a skill that needs a lot of practice, which means a lot of repetition. So if you want to paint portraits, you'll need to study and paint faces to get good at it, right? Well, studying takes time, and that often means painting the same face over and over again. Before the invention of photography, it wouldn't be sustainable for an artist to have someone sit for them while practicing, because that would take time, and as people have stuff to do, chances are they would need to be compensated for their time, right? Therefore, it would be better and cheaper to work with what you always have with you, your own face. Of course, I'm not 100% certain if this was the case for what happened back then, but it kind of makes sense, no? Though yeah, I can also see artists painting each other. Maybe they would take turns, or maybe they would be facing each other as they paint each other at the same time. But the thing is also familiarity. You often know your face better than anyone else's, as it's what stares back at you when you look in the mirror. So we are more likely to find mistakes with our own faces when we paint them, not to mention how we have a wealth of reference materials by using our own faces, as we are able to turn our heads to get the exact angle we would like. These days, many artists may prefer to paint celebrities over their own faces to learn, as there is a wealth of imagery found online, and that is also totally valid. So with that in mind, self-portraits may not be as much of a thing anymore. However, I still believe that artists use themselves as reference a lot more than people think. I mean, they can pose in front of a mirror, or photograph themselves, or even film themselves from specific angles and in specific poses. Oh, and I don't know if other artists do this, and I kind of assume that they do. When painting expressions on characters and so on, I often find myself pulling the same expression. This way I can both see the expression, but I can also feel where the tension is and so on. Quite useful if you ask me. Do you ever use yourself as reference in your art? Be it for poses, expressions, or to get better at drawing portraits? Let me know in the comments, as I would love to hear your thoughts on portraiture, self-portraits, and using yourself as reference. So why did I paint this self-portrait? Like I said, it was because I was unhappy with the one I did a year earlier. Part of it was to ensure that I have a profile picture that both represents me and my art style, but it was also because I wanted to work on my style that I use for portraits, as I tend to lean a bit more realistic. So I needed a bit of practice to get that right. So coming to the end of this painting, the question is, does this image represent me and my art style? Personally, I think so. It does look like me, and it's simplified in a way that represents how I draw other things. It also uses a limited colour palette. Has my style changed a little since then? Kind of, I suppose. But I find that art styles tend to be ever evolving and morphing to fit the topic of whatever image you're currently working on. But despite that, I am quite happy with how this image turned out, and I'm in no hurry to change it, at least not at the time of this recording. Thank you for watching.